Let's move on to the less wrong post section of our podcast. This is going to confuse, I'm assuming, a lot of people just because I expect we may have a number of drop-in listeners that have never listened to the Bayesian Conspiracy before to hear about the gangbang. And then right afterwards, there's going to be this talk about a sequence of blog posts written by some rationalist dude 15 years ago on the internet. And they're going to be like, what the hell is going on here? What does rationality have to do with gangbangs at all? And we might tell you if you stick around long enough, but for now you're going to have to remain qualitatively confused.
Yes, well, that's a great segue.
Is it? I think that may be a stretch.
I think some of the best segues are tortured. So the post here that we're going to talk about first is Qualitatively Confused, written by Eliezer Yudkowsky, March 14th, 2008. Almost 16 years ago to the day.
We are going through all his original Less Wrong sequence posts in order, in fact, and just talking about them because that's how we do here.
That's right.
This is a rationalist podcast first and foremost, darn it.
If not, we try to make it at least a close second. This talks about the difference between belief and truth and reality, which people often lump together in their head, right? And this is great. This has some great illustrations of how to shine light at the distinctions.
It starts out with a fictional interlocutor that I know we've all talked to before, saying that different societies have their own truths about things. And Eliezer's like, no, societies have different beliefs, and belief is a different type than truth. I can conceive of the possibility that my beliefs are false.
Yeah, I'm kind of my first postmodernist, post-truth person in college. And they were saying stuff like this, and to the extent of like, yeah, no, different people have different truths. And I was like, is that statement true?
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about here. They have different beliefs.
This, I think, is in my opinion, one of the core things about rationality, the idea of holding all your beliefs probabilistically rather than binary. Like, not just I believe something is true or I believe something is false or I believe something or I disbelieve something, but more the idea of trying to put a range of how confident you are in your beliefs rather than just 0 or 1.
Odds is a good way to put it because the math can be a lot easier, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would say it's a core tenet. I use the language of I believe this or I believe that. I mean it to say I'm extremely confident in whatever.
Yeah. But once you start putting a percentage on your beliefs rather than true or false, it drastically changes how you look at the world and even how you interact with the world.
Yeah, there was a great video from Julia Galef probably around at this time, maybe 10, 15 years ago. That's like 4 minutes long. We'll put in the show notes that I really liked. She summarizes what it was like switching from kind of like the naive, intuitive belief that like you're imagining you're seeing the world. Mm-hmm. Then when you notice that you're having beliefs about them, you imagine you're seeing your beliefs instead of realizing that, no, what you're seeing is actually your beliefs about the world.
Yeah.
That was a profound insight that she summarized really well in that video. So
Eliezer says, suppose that I assign a 70% probability to the proposition that snow is white. It follows that I think there's around a 70% chance that the sentence, snow is white, will turn out to be true. If the sentence, snow is white, is true, is my 70% probability assignment to the proposition also true? It's more true than it would have been if I'd assigned it 60% probability, but not so true as if I'd assigned it 80% probability. Perhaps a better word than truth would be accuracy.
I like that. One way to get around people's confusion with words is just to find a different one that suits the purpose. Yeah, because truth is one of those words that sneaks in a lot of connotations.
The idea that, like, is the 70% probability true is an interesting question because there's oftentimes people will say, like, there's a 70% chance of rain tomorrow, and then it doesn't rain, perhaps. And people are like, oh, well, that was full of shit. I'm like, well, you're still going to get 30% of the time when it doesn't rain. So the best way to know if it's true or not is to, add up all the times they said 70% and see how many times it actually rained.
Yeah, the best example of these for me is, election season, when you get forecasters of various calibrations guessing who's going to win the election. And then many of them are right, many of them are wrong. And when they're wrong, they're like, you were wrong. It's like, no, I said there was a 60% chance that they would win. It's a different state of affairs to say I have a confidence level rather than like, this is what will happen, right?
Yeah.
Those are qualitatively different things.
Elias just says that the nice distinctions of quantitative reasoning will be short-circuited if you start thinking snow is white with 70% probability is true, which is a type error. It is a fact about you that you believe 70% probability of snow is white. But that doesn't mean that the probability assignment itself can possibly be true.
I like that he mentions type errors again. I think he mentioned it in the last post. It also apparently applies to thinking and stuff too, but this is a common thing in programming languages with strictly typed and not strictly typed languages. Ask ChatGPT for more. But the gist is that you actually just can't compare those two statements in a way that gives you any meaningful answer, right?
Yeah. So actually going back to that, does that mean that it's the probability of rain tomorrow is 70% can't be a true statement?
Well, I mean, that can be an accurate statement, right? And its accuracy determines tomorrow with the arrival or failed arrival of rain, right?
I do think that's a darn good example. We should start using the word accuracy rather than truth for these sorts of things.
Works for me. I think it's accurate to say that will lead to a lot less confusion.
Yes. When you think in probabilities, your beliefs and your beliefs about your beliefs will hopefully not be represented similarly enough that you mix up belief and accuracy or mix up accuracy and reality.
This is, I think, demonstrated by the fact that, like, I look outside, I actually can't see the sun, but because I'm not looking out that direction, but I can see a lot of bright light on the ground. I believe that the sun is out.
Do you see distinct shadows?
Yes.
All right.
So, but the thing is like, how confident am I that the sun is out? 98%. How confident am I that I believe that the sun is out? Like 99.998.
Right.
Like,
right.
So the odds. So this is another thing that helps kind of draw that distinction is that it's hard to be. It's not impossible, but it's harder to be wrong about what you believe. Your beliefs about your beliefs are hard to fuck up, but it's really wrong. It's really easy to be wrong about what's actually going on.
Yes. The last thing I pulled out of here is, I really love the coin example. I go back to it a lot, but he says, uncertainty is a state of mind. A coin is not inherently 50% uncertain of which way it will land.
Yeah, the coin is not a belief processor. It doesn't have partial information about itself, right?
Right.
Partial information and uncertainty are things that happen in us, right?
Yes.
In reasoning / belief processing systems. I'm trying to be as generic as possible. In qualitative reasoning, you can create beliefs that correspond very straightforwardly to the coin, like the coin will land heads. So like the thing is, the coin will land heads is a statement about what you expect to happen. The belief will be true or false depending on the coin, but there's no transparent implication from the truth or falsity of the belief to the facing side of the coin.
I like to think that the idea that a coin has a 50-50 chance of landing on heads or tails, it's entirely a statement about what we know about the coin. It's actually going to land on one or the other when we flip it, but we don't know which, and there's no way for us to predict it, aside from saying it looks like a fair coin, so 50-50. Right.
But the thing is, the coin is one way or the other. It doesn't have a probability about what state it's in.
Yeah.
Right. So we often say the map is not the territory, but it's also important to keep in mind that the territory is not the map.
Yes.
The coin is not a belief, it's a coin.
All right, shall we move on to reductionism?
Yeah, let's do it.
I really love this post because it makes just a strong case for why reductionism is true.
Do we want to talk about what reductionism is first?
Sure. Reductionism is the idea that in the end, everything reduces to material components. There is no magic. There is no different rules that apply to different levels of reality. Everything is quarks interacting, or possibly if there's something even lower than that, then it's those things interacting.
Yeah, a century ago, it was, atoms interacting, but the same difference. It's that, stuff is made up of a smaller stuff. It's stuff all the way down. I like that Yudkowsky, he doesn't exactly lean on the definition. What he does is he says reductionism is simply the absence of belief, in particular, disbelief in a form of the mind projection fallacy.
I like this because reality is what's left when you strip away all the beliefs, right?
Right. It's hard to say whether or not I would be closer to reality if I had no beliefs at all.
Okay, I see. Because some of your beliefs about reality are true.
Or accurate, or, less wrong or whatever. But as he says in the post, yeah, reductionism is not so much a positive hypothesis as the absence of belief, in particular, disbelief in the form of mind projection fallacy. And you want to avoid making type errors like the coin is 50% heads or tails.
Right.
I believe it is, but the coin is one way or the other.
He uses the example of a 747 versus gold nuclei interacting in a particle accelerator. He says we use entirely different models to understand the aerodynamics of a 747 and the collision between gold nuclei in a collider. A computer modeling the aerodynamics of a 747 may not contain a single token, a single bit of RAM that represents a quark. So is the 747 made of something other than quarks? No, you're just modeling it with representational elements that do not have a one-to-one correspondence with the quarks of the 747. The map is not the territory.
I think this is well illustrated when thinking about video games. The NPCs or everything in it really is representative of something. You could see grass and trees and people and whatever, but there's no cells. There's no metabolism. There's nothing really happening under the hood there. You just see the outside because for the purposes of the game, there's no sense in modeling that deep. You know,
Yeah.
if you had a computer with all the power in the world, you might as well model it all the way down to the quark, and you might get a slightly better answer. But for the purposes of something as big as an airplane or something as big as air molecules causing air resistance, you don't need to go all the way down to the quantum mechanical level.
Yeah. He also talks about how you don't actually even have to model the 747 at all. Kind of like in your completely simulated video game, you wouldn't need to model individual NPCs. You wouldn't need to have fields for their names, for example. For a quantum 747 model, it's not necessary, in principle, for the model to contain explicit descriptions of things like airflow and lift. A model that contains only elementary particle fields and fundamental forces would contain all the facts about airflow and lift and wing positions, but these facts would be implicit rather than explicit.
But Eneash, I can see the wings right there, man. Then I'm quoting from the post like I'm having an original thought there. That was he says, "What, Christ anti-reductionist?" But the notion here is a subtle one. It's not just the notion of an object can have different descriptions at different levels. It's a notion that having descriptions at different levels is itself something you say that belongs in the realm of talking about maps, not the realm of talking about territory. Territory just has the one level, but we abstract things usefully at different levels. When I model you as a person, I certainly don't think about the cellular structure that makes you up, right? Those aren't the things that matter to me in my model about you.
Unless you're treating me for some kind of disease, maybe.
Then it would make sense for me to model you at a different level, right?
Yeah. I like his line that the map is not the territory, but you can't fold up the territory and put it in your glove box.
Right. Yeah, I mean, your map will never be as accurate as the territory. It can't contain everything.
I pulled out this line because it's going to be important later. When your mind simultaneously believes explicit descriptions of many different levels and believes explicit rules for transiting between levels as part of an efficient combined model, it feels like you are seeing a system that is made of different level descriptions and their rules for interaction. I pulled this out because I believe this is going to be important for the quantum physics section that is going to be coming up in like 2 years. So by then we'll have forgotten.
Yeah, that is something to keep in mind. It feels like you're seeing a system made of two different levels of description, but you're really not. The system is just the way it is. But again, I mean, a glass of water versus, two H2O molecules that you're working with in a lab or something, they're both water. In principle, they behave the same. Maybe more water behaves differently around more water than less or something, but it's all water all the way down, man.
Yeah, I think this idea of it feels like you're seeing different levels in reality, but that's not what you're actually seeing is going to be very important for the Copenhagen principle and the idea of collapse through observation. It feels like that's actually happening, but that's not what's actually happening.
Awesome. Well, in 2 years, we'll remember to circle around to that.
I really hope we do. To summarize, he says this is the thesis of reductionism, at least as he sees it. Reductionism is not a positive belief, but rather a disbelief that the higher levels of simplified multi-level models are out there in the territory. Understanding this on a gut level dissolves the question of how can you say the airplane doesn't really have wings when I can see the wings right there? The critical words are really and see. And just to loop this all the way back to our favorite fictional thing, this is how Harry James Potter Evans Varys could do partial transfiguration by ultimately being able to completely dissolve the idea that there's wings or erasers and just really grok that there's just quantum fields having effects on each other.
Yeah, there's some context is important to make that point land home. If for the uninitiated, everyone should read Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality, but if you haven't, transfiguration there works more sensibly than it does in the canon Harry Potter, because canonically there's no reason why people couldn't just make gold and food. In Methods of Rationality, you can only transfigure objects, and you can only change them for a while. Without constant effort. And so what's an object? Well, an object is this thing I'm holding. Specifically, it's not half of this thing I'm holding because I'm holding a one thing, right? And Harry, sits there and just browbeats his conception of the thing long enough to realize there's no one thing. and blows everyone's minds by turning, what was it, a glass marble, like, well, his first experiment was an eraser, but he blows everyone's mind by turning like half of a steel ball into glass or something.
Yeah.
So how did he transform the thing without transforming the whole thing? Well, I guess there is no whole thing.
Right.
Which that is the point. Wasn't that chapter titled Reductionism?
Oh shit, was it?
It might have been.
I don't remember now.
Yes. Well, I mean, there's a chapter called Reductionism. I'll bet you $50 that's the one.
I will not take that bet.
Well, I don't have a good segue. Do we want to just say what we're doing next time?
Next episode, we will be talking about the LessWrong posts explaining versus explaining away and fake reductionism. Ooh, fake reductionism.
All right, cool. Well, looking forward to it.